And now, it's time for the Nailsin Ratings. Witty commentary by me, Mr. Nailsin, on all things concerning life, culture, entertainment, and whatever else the cat may drag in. Alright, earlier I did a video about a few problems I noticed in the trailer that was released for the upcoming new Star Trek television series, Star Trek Discovery. It didn't match up with the continuity of the series. They claim it takes place in the original timeline, that the Captain Kirk and the old show came from and all that. And this takes place 10 years before Captain Kirk took command of the Enterprise and all that. Well, looking at it, it doesn't match up with that at all, because Star Trek already showed us what 10 years prior to Kirk looked like in the episode The Menagerie. And in point of fact, that it showed us 13 years prior to Kirk. So this series doesn't even try to match up to that. So the only explanation would be, I suppose, that there's some other subsection of the Federation that we just never saw before. Like their special ops Starfleet, something like that. So that might go to a long way to explaining it. Meanwhile, the Klingons, of course, don't resemble the classic Klingons at all. Either the original series, of course, and the later renditions from the movies and Next Generation and all that. No resemblance there at all, except the bumpy heads, and that's about it. So I suppose these Klingons must be a subsection of the Klingon Empire that we never heard anything about as well. So this might be a Special Ops Klingon section and a Special Ops Federation section going head-to-head, apparently. And maybe that'll clear that up. But meanwhile, new little images and footage is released to show you what they got going. And one thing, they showed the transporter room, and boy, doesn't resemble what transporter rooms looked like back then. So different uniforms, you might could get a pass with that because you're a different subsection. But this transporter doesn't resemble anything from the original, from that period, because let's take a look at it. See? Yeah. Doesn't look like that. Doesn't even really look like the Enterprise version. Now, Enterprise was a show that took place in the distant past. You know, it was like the first Starship Enterprise and all that. So if they had just set this show a little closer to that time period, a lot of this, I think, could work. Even with this transporter that doesn't resemble the transporter that was on Enterprise, it could still be seen as like a transitional move from where it eventually ends up down the line, but certainly not 10 years prior to Kirk. That's not enough time. And it's just too bad, because the uniforms, like I talked about earlier in here too, don't match up what the Federation looked like at the time, but they certainly look derivative of the Enterprise era. And if they had just been, you know, set like a decade after that or something like that, it probably would work a lot better. But for some reason, they want it in that time period. They just don't want it to look anything like what that time period has already been established to look like. So that's strange. I'm not sure why they're doing it like that. Meanwhile, another image that was released was the phaser. Oh boy, the phaser. That's one of the favorite gadgets of Star Trek. And of course, everybody knows what it looks like. Here we go. There's our phaser. And that's pretty much what it looked like. And then the image they released for Star Trek Discovery, here's the phaser. And it does bear some resemblance to that phaser. How about that, huh? Well, that wasn't really the original phaser, no. You see, back when Captain Pike was captain of the Enterprise, and even in the early days of Kirk, the phaser looked very different. It looked like this, yeah. Now, the front section of the Discovery phaser kind of resembles the front section of the old one, but it's more reminiscent of the more popular phaser shape that Kirk used throughout that series. So here again, they kind of just leapfrogged over it. And if you're going to argue it's a transitional phaser, it's not, because the first pilot with Kirk, Where No Man Has Gone Before, Kirk is using that old phaser that Captain Pike used. They hadn't quite changed them over yet for the rest of the series. So, yeah, that theory won't hold up either. So, boy, I just can't seem to get the homework done right. You know, all of this could have been avoided if they just set this at a different time, preferably in the distant future, beyond the timeline of Next Generation and all that. You know, the next generation of Star Trek. And so that way they could have more of a blank slate, and you could do pretty much whatever you want. Even the Klingons could look different, because you could say, hey, well, it's a cultural and evolutionary change or something like that. I don't know. And there you go. You wouldn't be open to all of this kind of criticism and being lazy on a pretty old franchise here that has certain parameters established. So when you're working in the ideas of prequels, you're boxing yourself in, and, well, I guess you just don't care. So, yeah, this is another faux pas here for Star Trek. Yeah, and another thing I thought at the time was that it's already been stated that the first pilot is kind of like a prelude to the rest of the series, which is probably a little gimmick to get you to sign up for the All Access, because the first episode they're going to put on the broadcast network so everybody can see it. But the second episode is probably more of the pilot for the series than the first one is, because that's when they really start with the Starship Discovery, and the main character, she becomes the first officer of that ship. But anyway, so I was thinking, oh, well, maybe the uniforms of Star Trek Discovery will be different, and this was some other thing, and maybe she was in a different time or something along those lines. I don't know. But all kind of theories you can come up with Star Trek. But no, those uniforms are pretty standard, because here's a picture of the captain of Discovery, and it's pretty much the same one we saw in the images from the other, the Shinsu ship that she's on first in the pilot. So, yeah, so that's not going to happen either. So, boy. Yeah, so the only thing I can think of is, like I said, there's some special ops section of the Federation that's different than what Spock and Pike and then later Kirk served in. So that's why they look a little different. And as for the Klingons, like I said, I guess those are special ops Klingons too. So maybe that's what they'll do to try to clean up this mistake, which, yeah, I think it's a bit of a mistake. And somebody just wasn't paying attention. But, you know, these things happen. We'll see. But nothing has convinced me to sign up for All Access. I will watch the show that's on the broadcast on CBS. But beyond that, but that show's really got to win me over. But when they've already admitted it's not really indicative of the entire series, well, that's going to be kind of hard to judge whether or not I really want to sign up for that. And I'm thinking I'm not going to do that. Probably, if I hear that it's so great, I'll order it on a DVD, perhaps, or somewhere else. Eventually, it's going to end up on Amazon or Netflix. So, might do that. But, look, I got enough subscriptions as it is. And this isn't winning me over. It's too bad, because I think Star Trek belongs on television. The movies, some of them are good, they're hit and miss, and they're fun and all, but Star Trek works better in the TV series format. And this isn't looking good, to me anyway. But, you know, we'll see. All right, there you go. Strike two on the early images of Star Trek Discovery. So, at 1 star, 1 star, we can hold out hope that it'll be better than I suspect.
And that was the Nailsin Ratings. Commentary from me, Mr. Nailsin.
The views and opinions expressed in the Nailsin ratings do not necessarily reflect those held by Radio Misfits or any other entity that Mr. Nailsin may or may not be involved with. So, any complaints or comments should be sent to @Mr. Nailsin on Twitter, where they'll be promptly ignored and or blocked.